Members of the jury, thank you. Members of the public gallery, thank you also for attending today. This is the case of Regina versus R. I will now begin by swearing you in. Please could you repeat the legal oath after me. I do solemnly, sincerely and truly declare
solemnly, sincerely and truly declare
and affirm that I will faithfully try the defendant and give a true verdict based on the evidence. Thank you. You will now be presented with the evidence in the case. It is your responsibility to decide, based on the evidence presented to you, whether the defendant is guilty or not guilty of the offence of rape. You will have to reach a unanimous verdict. That means you all have to agree on the decision. In order to find the defendant guilty of the offence of rape, you must believe beyond all reasonable doubt that he raped the victim. You must be satisfied that you are sure he raped the victim. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. You will now hear the cross-examination of the victim. Once the cross-examination has concluded, you will have some time to discuss amongst yourselves what you think the verdict should be. Does anyone have any questions?
No.
Thank you. Please could everybody remain seated while the victim takes to the witness stand.
Thank you, Your Honour. Miss Coombs, is it correct that you were at Reading Festival on the August Bank Holiday weekend in 2014?
Yes.
And that this was the first music festival you had ever attended?
Yes.
And you attended this festival during the summer, between finishing school and starting your law degree at the University of Cambridge?
Yes.
So you would agree with me that this festival was a cause for celebration? That this was a chance to let your hair down?
Yeah, I'd say so.
And is it correct that Friday the 22nd of August 2014 was the first night you spent at this festival?
Yes, that's correct.
How much alcohol did you consume that night?
Quite a lot, I guess.
What time did you start drinking alcohol?
Sometime in the afternoon, I think.
Were you playing drinking games?
Yeah, we were playing Ring of Fire at the campsite before we went to the main stages.
And who was it that got the last king in the game?
That was me.
And what did that mean, as per the rules of the game?
It meant I had to drink what's called the King's Cup, which is essentially a glass in the middle of the circle of cards, and everybody that got a king before me had to pour their alcohol into that cup, and I drank it.
Did you continue drinking when you were at the main stage?
It's difficult to remember. I think probably. Yeah.
And did you take any other substances that night?
yes, I took MDMA.
And what time did you take that?
Can't really remember. I think before we went to the main stage.
Had you taken this drug before?
No. This was the first time.
But when did you start feeling the effects of the drug?
My memory's a bit blurry, but I think when we got to the main stage, I felt it.
How did it make you feel?
It's difficult to recall, but I remember snippets of dancing, feeling quite happy, affectionate, I guess. Yeah.
Were you in a relationship at the time, Miss Coombs?
No. No, me and my boyfriend of 3 years had broken up, actually, just before the festival.
And is it correct that you said to your friend, as she has stated in her written evidence, that you were on the pool that weekend?
Maybe we joked about something along those lines.
And where did you meet the defendant?
We met at the main stage. I was dancing with my group of friends, and he was dancing next to us with his group of friends. That's where we met.
Did you like the defendant when you met him?
At the time, I guess, I liked him, yeah.
Did you flirt with the defendant?
Maybe a bit. I'm not sure, really.
Did you dance with the defendant?
Yeah, we danced a bit.
And did you kiss the defendant?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we kissed. Yeah.
Did you have a lot of physical contact with the defendant?
I don't really remember.
Did you suggest to the defendant that you both leave the main stage?
No. Well, I don't know. I remember at one point we both left the main stage together. But I can't remember if it was me or him that suggested that we do so. So,
How did your friends react when you both left the main stage?
they told us to have fun. I think, something like that.
Did any of your friends show any concern that you were leaving with the defendant?
Not that I remember, but everyone was drunk or high, or both.
So none of your friends tried to stop you from leaving?
Well, no. No.
What were you wearing that night, Miss Coombs?
Shorts, I think, and a top of some kind.
And what was the weather like that day?
Warm. Sunny.
And later in the evening, after it got dark?
It got colder. A lot colder in the evening.
Did you bring a jacket with you?
No, I don't think I would have wanted to to carry it while I was dancing, so probably not.
Did you suggest to the defendant that you could both go back to his tent?
No,
Are you saying that you cannot remember if that happened or not? Or did it happen?
I don't think that happened, but I don't remember anything that happened. As I said in my written evidence, I don't remember anything that happened between leaving the main stage and waking up in his tent when he was on top of me, and I pushed him off, and I ran out of the tent.
Do you remember asking the defendant to go back to his tent? Because you were cold?
No, I don't think I would have said that. If I was cold, I would have gone back to my own tent and got a jacket or something. I don't think I would have said that.
Miss Coombs, you say at that point in the evening, after leaving the main stage, you don't remember what happened. That you were under the influence of MDMA and alcohol, which you had been consuming since the afternoon. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And how many tents would you estimate were at this festival?
I don't know how I could possibly answer that.
Just hazard a guess, Miss Coombs. 10, 20, 1,000, 10,000?
Thousands, I guess. Tens of thousands of tents.
And do you think you would have managed to find your tent among all those thousands in your MDMA and alcohol-induced state?
I mean, maybe. I eventually found it after I woke up in his tent and pushed him off of me. I ran from his circle of tents to my campsite. I ran and I ran and I ran, and I kept tripping up on all of the tent pegs, but I eventually found it. So yeah, I think
Whose tent did you wake up in the next morning, Miss Coombs?
my friend's tent. I mistakenly got into my friend's tent after I ran back because it was dark, and that's why I was tripping up on all the tent pegs.
How long do you estimate that you were in the defendant's tent that night, Miss Coombs?
I don't remember. I don't remember going to his tent. I just remember waking up and he was lying on top of me, and my shorts and my underwear were around my ankles, and it was the music was still playing when we left the main stage, so it must have been before 11, and it was dark still when I got back to my own tent, so maybe 4 or 5 a.m. So how many hours is that? Maybe
So 6 hours or so. Perhaps a sufficient amount of time to sober up enough to find your tent.
I don't know.
Miss Coombs, you say you ran back to your campsite.
Yes.
That you left the defendant's tent in a rush?
Yeah. I woke up and I told him to get off me, and I pushed him off, and I remember trying to undo the zip. It was stuck, and I was frantically trying to undo it, and then I just ran. I ran away.
Did you have time to put your shoes on?
I don't remember putting my shoes on. Actually,
Did you run back with bare feet?
no. No, I guess I must have had them on already.
Do you remember the defendant asking you to remove your shoes when you had arrived at the tent hours earlier that night, and you subsequently removing them, so that you could go straight to sleep along with the defendant?
No, I don't remember that at all.
Did you have time to pull up your underwear and your shorts when you left the defendant's tent?
I mean, I must have had to, because I wouldn't have been able to run otherwise, but I remember they were still unbuttoned, because I had to use the bathroom really urgently when I was running back, and I looked down, and they were undone still. I remember
Did
that.
you use the bathroom?
Well, I couldn't find an actual bathroom, but I just went where I was. I squatted down and then I went, and then I got up and I carried on.
Do you remember removing your own shorts and your underwear in the tent?
No, I don't remember that.
If I suggest to you that you had tried to use the bathroom earlier in the night while the defendant was asleep, that you had put on your shoes and removed your underwear and shorts, but were still too intoxicated to navigate your way out of the tent, and subsequently fell back asleep, what would you say to that?
I would say that is untrue.
That you left the defendant's tent in a rush when you awoke for the second time, because you were in an urgent need to use the bathroom, and had sobered up sufficiently enough to leave the tent at that point?
No, I left in a rush because I woke up in a panic, and I was confused, and I wanted to be out of there and away from him as quickly as possible. I didn't know what was happening to me.
Can you describe the way the defendant was laying on top of you when you awoke, Miss Coombs?
No, I remember feeling the weight of him, but I don't remember the specifics of it. It was so long ago. Sorry.
What was the defendant wearing?
I don't remember that.
Where were the defendant's hands?
I don't even know where my own hands were. This was years ago. I don't remember.
Did the defendant resist your attempt to, as you say, push him off of you? Did he try to stop you from leaving the tent?
Not that I remember. No.
Because the defendant was in shock at your sudden outburst, which had just awoken him. And before that, you were both merely asleep, cuddling to keep each other warm.
No, that is a lie. If he wanted to keep me warm, he could have used a sleeping bag or a jumper or a coat or something else.
Were there any other sleeping bags in the tent, Miss Coombs? Or just the defendant's sleeping bag?
I don't remember that detail.
Did you run back to your tent later that night because it was cold and you didn't have a jumper?
No, I was running away from him.
Because the effects of the MDMA, which you had said made you feel affectionate, had finally worn off?
No,
Miss Coombs, in your evidence, you're asked by the officer who's asking you the questions to account for what the defendant said when you awoke in his tent. And you say, "I don't remember, it's all a blur." Is that because your version of events didn't happen?
No, I don't remember what happened this morning, let alone on that night almost 10 years ago. I mean, God, do you really think I would sit here and put myself through this torturous process if my version of events didn't happen? That I would willingly relive this trauma all these years later and let you turn me inside out in front of a room full of strangers? I mean, I just
This
don't...
is not relevant to my question, Miss Coombs. Please refrain from elaboration.
It's just not fair. Do you know how degrading this is? How difficult it is for me to sit here and expose such a corrosive wound? I have lost everything because of this. I have lost...
Miss Coombs.
I have lost my sense of self, my dignity, the sense of joy in my sexuality. All my relationships have failed. What could I possibly have to gain from lying to you?
Would Your Honour please remind the witness to just answer the question and not make speeches?
How can you call this justice?
I understand. It was a difficult and confusing night for you, Miss Coombs. Would you like a minute to compose yourself?
No. No, I can do this.
As you wish. Did you, the following day, tell your friends that you were raped or sexually assaulted?
No. No, I didn't understand the gravity of what had just happened to me.
What did you say to your friends the next day when they asked you what happened with the defendant the night previously?
I just told them that we went back to his tent and that I don't remember because I was drunk. I didn't tell them how much pain I was in. Internally, I was embarrassed.
Embarrassed that you had gone back to the defendant's tent just a few hours after meeting him as a result of the effects of the MDMA you had ingested? No,
I was confused. I was in shock. I didn't know what had happened to me, and I just didn't want to ruin everyone's fun on the first day.
Miss Coombs, why didn't you go to seek medical assistance at the welfare tent if you really were in pain?
I don't think I wanted to acknowledge what had happened. I wanted to block it out like I did for years.
Were you embarrassed that this pain was in fact self-inflicted as a result of falling over the tent pegs on your journey back to your tent that night?
No, it wasn't that. It was him. He did that to me. It was him.
Your Honour, those are my questions. Thank you.
Members of the jury, thank you. You have now heard the evidence in the case of Regina versus R. I now leave it to you to decide whether you think the defendant is guilty or not guilty of the offence of rape. I remind you that your decision must be unanimous. I will leave you to discuss amongst yourselves for a few minutes. I would deeply suggest that the members in the public gallery remain silent while the jury deliberate. Once you have decided, I would like the foreperson of the jury to stand and deliver the verdict. That will be you. You just have to tell the courtroom whether you find the defendant guilty or not guilty. Does anybody have any questions?
No.
Thank you.
There you have it.
How do you express, how do you elaborate consent? How do you say, you know, it could be non-verbal consent or something?
If someone's
Well,
not
you've
in
got-
the state
In that
to give
position, not able
that
to-
That's true.
verbal
Not able to
consent,
consent.
then there's no
Yeah.
consent.
You always know when someone's too drug
Yeah.
Yeah. People always say, well, you can't know, but you do know, you know?
No, this is not like a spark waking up like from one second to another. It's more like consciousness. But being on the stage that you have like your shoes and as well just like not even like your pants completely off and all that. So about
There's so much bullshit about running to the toilet. Yes, finding other reasons from the prosecution. Yes, exactly. Side of things. Yeah, just trying to find other reasons to defend the defendant. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would be leaning on side of guilty.
Yeah.
But obviously it has to be unanimous. Is there
I don't think there is.
anyone?
I felt it as well.
Yeah.
I think so too.
I think that is unanimous. Your Honour.
Please stand and deliver your verdict to the courtroom.
Your Honour, this jury finds the defendant guilty.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes the court trial of Regina versus R. You may now leave the courtroom.